Taiwan's homegrown Medigen vaccine is embroiled in a political dispute as many countries refuse to accept it. Beijing's technological advances are a threat to us all. That's the warning from the head of the UK's spy agency. Why North Korea's recent flurry of missile launches are more threatening than ever before. Plus, we're just days out from the 20th Congress of China's Communist Party, a meeting that could have huge ramifications for Taiwan. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Khvat. Tourists from Taiwan are flocking to Japan as both sides lift COVID restrictions. But people who've opted for Taiwan's homegrown Medigen vaccine must take a PCR test there, as it's not on Japan's approved list. As John Van Trieste reports, it's put the Medigen vaccine at the center of a political dispute.
Packed and eager to get on board. Nearly 2,000 travelers checking into Taiwan's airports, ready for their flights to Japan. For the first time in more than 2 years, the country has reopened its borders, but only to those vaccinated.
就算是很久没出国的感觉吧，所以就很期待啊。
Japan's reopening is especially significant. In 2019, Taiwan accounted for around 15% of the country's visitors. But the restrictions aren't fully lifted for all. Travelers who've had Taiwan's homegrown Medigen COVID vaccine will still need to take a PCR test, something that may cost them around $100. That's because Medigen is not on Japan's approved vaccine list. And that's become a point of political contention. KMT lawmaker and Taipei mayoral candidate Jiang Wan-an has questioned the government's information campaign to promote the vaccine, asking whether it was aimed at helping the company financially. He also says the government should take responsibility for the vaccine's lack of acceptance abroad. But Premier Su Tseng-chang defended the vaccine.
能够自己生产疫苗，就是最能保护国人健康。2年前还是委员一再呼吁，
我当然支持国产疫苗，但是我支持是要国际认证、WHO 标准的台湾队的疫苗，不是投机。
At Taoyuan International Airport, though, the political strife has done little to dampen the excitement of the tourists. Many just eager to get on board and start their holiday.
还好，因为都有打疫苗啊，然后口罩戴着，就跟可能心情就跟在台湾差不多吧。
And with Taiwan also set to lift its own restrictions, they can look forward to a quarantine-free return when they get back home. Patrick Chen and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
And as mentioned, from Thursday, mandatory quarantine will be scrapped for people coming to Taiwan. The decision to relax border controls was partially based on a prediction about when the current COVID wave would peak. Our reporter Yujing Huang spoke to Lynn Shanghai, a professor of epidemiology, about what the number of cases means for Taiwan's pandemic prevention efforts.
Taiwan's Central Epidemic Command Center previously predicted that the peak would be on September 21st or 28th, but the confirmed cases are actually higher in October. What can we tell from the numbers?
I think predicting the peak, the timing of the peak, and the number of the cases at the peak time is very difficult. This kind of prediction is at the most being used as to help people or help the government prepare for the worst case scenario. So I think we should not kind of over-interpret the results of the interpretation and or the prediction, and what is going to affect the timing of the peak and the size of the peak is a number of factors. I think for the current wave of outbreak, there is still a certain period of time that we're going to experience this level of outbreak. It's not going to finish or end anytime soon.
Is it possible that people are underreporting, as is in other countries? How confident are you in these official numbers?
There are countries that have been changing their reporting behavior, for example, like more towards more severe cases, and also the efforts that the government or people spend in reporting probably varies hugely across countries. So I think comparing the number of confirmed cases per capita across countries at this present stage is probably not the best way of understanding the severity or the level of severity for COVID-19. You can probably look at, for example, the number of hospitalizations or the number of COVID-19 deaths per capita. This is more comparable across, although there's issues of how different governments define a death is COVID-19 or not. Different countries may have some different practice, but at least I think mortality is probably a better indicator than like daily number of cases, confirmed cases.
So going forward, what COVID prevention measures can stay and what should be loosened?
This has to be dynamic over time, because we don't know what like the future variants is going to do to us. But I think for now, if we focus on the Omicron, people are now getting used to testing, self-testing, reporting, and isolation. So I think we can gradually, taking the experiences from other countries. For example, Japan has actually never done any mandatory mask wearing policy. It's all voluntary. So I think kind of moving back to a more voluntary basis, a spontaneous way of prevention and control is probably, for now, is the way to go, and making the like quarantine or the isolation less burdensome is currently still a burden to the public health officials in many places.
The head of Britain's cyber intelligence agency says China is using its economic and technical might to threaten global security. Jeremy Fleming, the director of GCHQ, said that Beijing's growing power is a major risk to the future of the UK and other Western countries. He said China was using technology like digital currencies and its Beidou satellite navigation network to tighten its grip on its population and spread its influence abroad. He described Beijing's actions as a, quote, threat to us all.
Now, taken together, overt and covert, we must conclude that Beijing is using all of the levers it has to challenge the international post-war consensus on economics and technology, and that it intends to rewrite the rules of international security, both close to home and further afield, in ways, frankly, that none of us have faced before.
Taiwanese and Ukrainian lawmakers have founded a friendship association. The Tuesday launch, held online, included Taiwanese legislators from all major parties. The Taiwan-Ukraine Parliament Members' Friendship Association will act as an informal communication channel between the two countries. New Power Party lawmaker Claire Wang is the vice president of the association. She told TaiwanPlus that Ukraine and Taiwan have a lot in common.
I think after the Ukraine-Russia's wars happened, I think more and more country and Taiwan ourselves is focused on how we can stand for ourselves, because no matter Ukraine or Taiwan face to Russia or China, we are a small countries, and also with that. In Ukraine's situation, they need to fight for themselves. Then other countries will support them, and that is very similar to Taiwan. We face the very strong and high pressure from China. That is our neighbor, and we need to more focus on ourselves.
Analysts in South Korea say that North Korea's recent missile tests are becoming more threatening. That's partially due to advancements in Pyongyang's missile technology, but also because their launch sites are getting harder to find. Jaime Ocon explains.
North Korea has test-fired more than 40 missiles this year, shattering its previous record of 23 tests in 2017. But analysts say that the way a recent ballistic missile was launched caught many by surprise.
저수지에서 쏜 거는 제가 알기로는 처음이라고 봐요. 그래서 제가 이번에 북한은 새로운 미사일을 개발했다. 그래서 SLBM이라고 했는데 그거는 서브마린 런치트가 아니잖아요. 서브마린에 쏜 게 아니기 때문에 언더워터 런치라고 바꿔라. 그래서 ULBM이라고 제가 새로 하나 별명을 지어주고 싶어요.
The possible development of an underwater launched missile could pose a new threat, as its silo location might be harder to find.
이거를 이런 새로운 플랫폼을 개발을 해서 뭔가 하여튼 탐지를 안 당하도록 하기 위해서 굉장히 많은 노력을 하고 있구나. 어떻게 보면 이제 그 한미의 그 탐지 자산을 굉장히 두려워하고 있구나. 역으로 보면 그렇게 생각할 수 있는 거죠.
Most North Korean weapons tests have involved short-range ballistic missiles. But after Pyongyang fired an intermediate-range missile over Japan on October 4th, some experts say that the isolated nation could be gearing up for a possible nuclear test not seen since 2017.
7차 핵실험을 한 이유는 이렇게 다양하게 핵무기를 소형화해서 모든 미사일에 실을 수 있는 자신감을 보여주는 거라고. 그래서 미사일을 이렇게 보여주는 거는 결국에는 거기에 핵탄두를 실어서 우리가 날릴 수 있으니 절대 우리를 함부로 건들지 마라. 이런 시그널을 보여주는 거죠.
South Korea, Japan, and the U.S. have been stepping up their military presence around the Korean peninsula. And with North Korea's recent missile test launches, the South and its allies may just have to adjust their defenses. Patrick Chen and Jaime Ocon for TaiwanPlus.
Smaller is better. That's the direction Taiwan's military is heading with its next-generation warships. The military had originally proposed building a single 4,500-ton frigate, but according to a budget proposal sent to Taiwan's legislature, they are now considering two smaller 2,000-ton vessels. It's in line with a strategy to move towards asymmetric warfare. That means using a larger number of mobile platforms to defend against a more powerful enemy. One of the ships will focus on anti-air capabilities. That's expected to enter service in 2025, while the other will conduct anti-submarine operations and should be ready by 2026. A Taiwan military equipment manufacturer is under fire for allegedly using Chinese materials in bulletproof vests.
物料来源它有一定规范的，里面很清楚，就是不能够用入货。我们现在正已经走入这法律程序啊，所以我们的就看就结果怎么样。但一般的规范啊，军备局大家可以有目共睹，绝对按照规定来走，不会逾越任何的规范。
The government has already confiscated the company's $400,000 security deposit and fined it another $154,000. The military will also look into how the contract was awarded. The 8th U.S. Congressional delegation to visit Taiwan this year has met with President Tsai. The 5-member delegation is led by U.S. Congresswoman Eddie Bernice Johnson, who heads the U.S. House Space and Technology Committee. She will visit Taiwan's National Space Organization to discuss ways to strengthen science, space and technology partnerships. Johnson described Taiwan as a vital trading partner.
This relationship is essential to our national and economic security, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to relate this in person to the Madam President and her administration.
Taipei's Metro will begin offering free feminine hygiene products at stations across the capital next month. The trial program will begin at 20 of Taipei's busiest stations and follows calls from Taipei city councillors to end the taboo around periods. Taipei Metro said it will review the program after the trial period. Taipei follows other Asian cities like Seoul and Tokyo in offering free sanitary products at metro stations. Stay with us here on TaiwanPlus for more news after the break, including a win for NASA and its mission to protect the Earth from celestial objects. Back in a moment.
我想用音乐改变这个世界嘛，那其实不是老板帮我想，那个是我自己讲。我很喜欢像 Bob Dylan、John Lennon 或是 Bob Marley 那一种有影响力的音乐家，那我就在幻想说，我是不是也可以跟他们一样干大事。
下雨的晚上，那个时候就开始试着帮他找出属于黄界的品牌核心，所以那时候我们抓出3个关键字，就是幽默、温暖、热情，是那个时候才开始有比较明确的去定调它。
好，我问凯特说，我有什么该说的没说？他讲卖票，我听懂了啊。
虽然说，在这个追求音乐的过程，还有产业，会一直给人很多不同的那种冲击，但是我觉得他是一个很努力在保有自己喜欢音乐的热情的那一个。另外的角度，他其实也有某部分他的对生命的一些焦虑，他常常也会不太知道自己有多好。
你说写出很多温暖人心的歌，那个纯粹是因为我自己心里过不去，就是其实我的歌很多都是在解决我自己遇到的问题，所以我的歌词里面有很多我跟你，其实那个你都是我好像在对人家说什么，其实我是在对我自己说，你应该要这样子。现在什么想吗？完全不敢说我要用音乐改变这个世界，但是我还是会持续的做这件事情，因为改变1、2个人也算是改变了这个世界的一部分吧。让我们一起去走走，可以让你快乐的时候更快乐，可以让你难过的时候不那么难过。又或者是某一首歌在你的人生里象征着某一个时光，那我也改变了这个世界。让我慢慢告诉你。
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. Chile's lawmakers have voted to join a regional free trade pact.
Se aprueba entonces el Tratado Integral y Progresista de Asociación Transpacífica.
After 4 years of debate, 27 senators voted in favor of the deal, while 10 voted against it. The pact still needs to be signed by President Gabriel Boric. The free trade deal is one of the world's biggest, and Taiwan applied to become a member last year. A funeral has been held in Thailand for some of the victims of last week's kindergarten massacre. A teacher and 18 students were cremated at a mass ceremony at a temple. In total, 36 people were killed last Thursday during a knife and gun attack carried out by a former police sergeant who later killed himself. It was Thailand's worst massacre in recent history. NASA has declared its mission to shift an asteroid a smashing success. Last month, the US Space Agency deliberately crashed a spacecraft into a harmless asteroid to see if it could alter its path. On Tuesday, NASA announced that the asteroid's trajectory had been shifted. The mission's purpose was to test a defense system designed to stop any future asteroid from crashing into Earth. NASA said it was a watershed moment for planetary defense and for humanity. The Chinese Communist Party will begin its 20th Congress in Beijing this weekend, a twice-in-a-decade meeting that this year is set to hand President Xi Jinping a norm-breaking third 5-year term. The move would make him arguably the most powerful Chinese leader since Mao Zedong. As Xi solidifies his grip on power, there's concern he will also harden his approach towards Taiwan, as James Chater now reports.
Well, I believe that every Chinese leader has said that reunification of Taiwan with the motherland is a historic mission of the Chinese Communist Party.
The big difference between Xi Jinping and his two predecessors is that Xi Jinping has tied the taking of Taiwan to the fulfillment of his so-called China dream.
祖国完全统一的历史任务一定要实现，也一定能够实现。
In mid-October, nearly 2,300 delegates from across China will attend the 20th Congress of the Chinese Communist Party, where Xi Jinping is set to take a norm-busting third term as China's president. cementing his position as the country's most powerful leader since the founder of the People's Republic of China, Mao Zedong. But as power centralizes around one man, to an extent not seen in China for decades, fears are mounting Xi may use his third term as president to ramp up pressure on Taiwan, which Beijing claims is part of China's sacred territory.
Xi Jinping changed the whole direction regarding the Taiwan policy because he has all the power in himself, that he has no constraints about what he is doing. Definitely there's a concern about what Xi Jinping, after he assumed the third term and of the CPTPP leadership, what he might do about Taiwan.
Chinese Communist Party congresses take place every 5 years and are the most important events in China's political calendar. At these highly choreographed meetings, the makeup of China's new government and usually the new president is decided. But this year, that's all set to change because Xi Jinping has abolished the usual 2 5-year term limits on the Chinese presidency, in effect allowing him to rule for life.
20-party Congress is first and foremost about Xi Jinping being able to stay in power beyond the customary 10 years maximum. Once Xi Jinping has done so, he will double down on all his policies, including the policy towards Taiwan.
Xi, more than any previous Chinese president, has linked unifying Taiwan and China to securing his legacy alongside Mao as one of China's great leaders.
Under Xi Jinping, China's policy on Taiwan has been uncompromising and unilateral. So on the diplomatic front, we've seen that since 2016, Beijing has quite effectively peeled away 8 of the countries that used to recognize Taiwan. They have protested Taiwan's inclusion in international organizations. We've seen near daily intrusions into Taiwan's air defense identification zone.
Xi's authoritarian approach in China, his vision for how he wants to unify Taiwan with China, and Taiwan's commitment to protect its democracy all means the positions of Beijing and people here in Taiwan are further apart than they've ever been.
台湾人民和朝野政党的最大的共识就是捍卫主权以及我们民主自由的生活方式。这一点我们没有妥协的空间。
In August, China issued its third white paper on Taiwan, in which it promised to unify Taiwan under the one country, two systems model, the same system offered to Hong Kong when it returned to Chinese rule in 1997. It means Taiwan would be Chinese territory, but retain a high degree of autonomy. But the crackdown on pro-democracy protests in Hong Kong since 2019 and erosion of freedoms under the national security law has shattered Taiwanese faith in Beijing's promises.
More and more Taiwanese people realize, okay, we cannot trust in CCP, not at all. We just cannot trust it. There's a fact that almost nobody support for the one country, two system proposal by the CCP in Taiwan now.
And on top of Taiwanese distrust of China, are deteriorating ties between China and Taiwan's most important ally and arms provider, the United States.
China has launched several ballistic missiles into water surrounding Taiwan after Beijing announced the start of live-fire military drills. The exercises come after House Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan
In August, Nancy Pelosi became the first US House Speaker to visit Taiwan in 25 years. Beijing responded by launching 4 days of unprecedented live-fire military drills in locations surrounding Taiwan.
The actions that Beijing took in response to Pelosi's visit were likely actions and objectives that China had wanted to pursue on Taiwan even prior to the visit. A new normal has been established in the Taiwan Strait. There is regular presence of Chinese military ships and planes crossing the Medigen line.
Beijing said Pelosi's trip undermined America's One China policy, which recognizes Beijing and not Taipei as the sole government of China, but does not take a position on Taiwan's sovereignty. Accusations Washington denied. But recent comments by US President Joe Biden that Washington would defend Taiwan if China attacked are casting doubt over the geopolitical balance that has lasted in the Taiwan Strait for 7 decades.
I think that China continues to believe that the U.S. One China policy is evolving in a very negative direction. I'm quite pessimistic about the U.S.-China relationship. The level of distrust has not been this high in 50 years.
Those strained ties, the eradication of dissenting voices in Chinese politics, and Xi's deep sense of historical mission regarding Taiwan are exacerbating fears about the future of Taiwan's democracy after the upcoming Communist Party Congress.
After the conclusion of the 20th National Congress, Xi Jinping probably would not be constrained anymore, and then his adventures toward Taiwan could actually increase.
He's removing any kinds of constraint, so that is dangerous for sure.
Taiwan will have to be preparing itself for the date when China will simply do the unthinkable. It is coming.
Some intelligence officials have said Xi wants China's army to be ready for an attack on Taiwan by 2027, but there's still debate about an exact timeline. Regardless, one thing is certain. After the 20th Party Congress, Xi Jinping is unlikely to pull back from an already unyielding approach to Taiwan.
And we will have special coverage of the Chinese Communist Party's 20th Congress and its implications for Taiwan right here on TaiwanPlus. Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. Finally, we leave you with images of the World of Football exhibition in Qatar, featuring the history of football and World Cup tournaments. I'm Yin Khvat. Take care and see you next time.